Think about this. The free press is supposed to be the watchdog of democracy. It's considered the fourth estate, independent, fearless, holding power to account.
I was excited to be up here on stage with President Biden tonight, mostly to see if I could figure out where Obama was pulling the strings from.
But what happens when the press itself becomes compromised? In this episode, we'll walk through 5 systemic cracks that have quietly hollowed out journalism from the inside.
Now, I am a new American, of course, and I don't know who to vote for. This is my first presidential election this November. And I thought, rather than decide, in the anonymity, as is my right as an American, I thought, why not ask you people tonight? Who knows more about presidential elections than you guys? So let's just make a bit of noise. Should I vote Republican or Democrat? Republican? That's not bad. Or Democrat? Well, I'd say that puts to bed the myth of liberal media bias, wouldn't you?
And I'm not talking about this bias alone, although that's absolutely part of it. I'm talking about the structure of modern media. Who funds it, who controls its distribution, who incentivizes it, and who decides whether you ever see it at all. First, governments are selectively bankrolling publishers, handing financial lifelines to outlets they favor and letting others wither. They are literally subsidizing the publishers that criticize them least. Second, the journalism profession skews heavily left. It's always been this way. Creative industries overwhelmingly swing left. Just like film, music, and academia, the people choosing what to cover and how to frame it are not a representative sample of the population they're supposed to serve. Third, there's a lack of conservative media. When the media landscape is stacked 10-1 on the left, even perfectly unbiased distribution still produces a left-leaning information diet. It's a simple numbers game. Fourth, the old subscription model that rewarded accuracy is dead. What replaced it? Clicks, impressions, and outrage. Publishers aren't paid to be right anymore, they're paid to make you react. And fifth, even if a publisher does everything right, they still have to get past the gatekeepers. Tech giants with their own ideological left leanings decide whose content surfaces and whose gets buried. If you think these conversations are as fun as I do, hit that like and subscribe button. My name is Chris, and this is The Think Report. The term Fourth Estate is most commonly credited to Edmund Burke in the late 1700s. The story goes like this. Burke was in the British Parliament and pointed to the reporters in the gallery, saying something along the lines of, "There are 3 estates in Parliament, but in the reporters' gallery yonder, there sits a 4th estate, are more important than they all." At the time, the 3 estates were clergy, nobility, and commoners. Burke's point was simple and pretty sharp. The press had become a power center of its own, influencing public opinion and indirectly government decisions. In the US, the framers of the United States Constitution absolutely expected a free press to act as a watchdog, even though they didn't design it as an official part of government. The core idea was that freedom of the press meant government accountability. The strongest evidence comes from the First Amendment, which explicitly protects freedom of the press. This wasn't accidental. The founders had just fought a revolution against a government that controlled and punished dissenting speech. James Madison argued that public opinion informed by a free press was essential to restrain government power. Thomas Jefferson famously said he would choose newspapers over government if forced. A bit dramatic, but you get the point. As a result, there's a strong constitutional case to be made that when the US government funds media, they are effectively acting against the spirit of the First Amendment. Although the First Amendment does not say that governments can't fund media or that governments must stay financially separate from media, it does say that governments can't censor They can't punish lawful journalism. So one can make a pretty strong argument that by funding publication A, you are economically punishing or censoring publication B. The principle of a free press rests on one fundamental assumption: that journalism operates independently of the institutions it's meant to scrutinize. In both Canada and the US, that assumption has been quietly hollowed out through the direct public funding of media organizations, and the consequences for democratic accountability are pretty serious. For the 2024-2025 fiscal year, CBC/Radio Canada reported a total of approximately $1.4 billion in government funding and $588 million in self-generated revenue for a combined total income of nearly $1.9 billion. This is not a grant, a subsidy, or an arm's length investment. It's a core operating funding that no private broadcaster receives at anything close to that scale. A media organization that depends on government for its survival cannot credibly hold government to account. The financial relationship creates a structural conflict of interest that no editorial policy would contradict. The CBC is certainly not going to bite the hand that feeds it. $1.4 billion divided by 40 million in population means that each Canadian is paying $35 per year to fund the CBC. Wouldn't you rather have that $35 back in your pocket so you can choose your own subscription? In the United States, the mechanism is slightly more indirect, but no less real. The federal government funds the Corporation for Public Broadcasting at over $500 million annually, which in turn distributes money to PBS and NPR stations across the country. NPR itself receives only about 1% of its budget directly from the federal sources, a figure often cited to dismiss concerns. But local member stations draw between 8 and 15% of their budgets from CPB funding. Pull that thread and the entire public radio network frays. The dependency is real, even if it's laundered through an intermediary. The deeper problem is not merely financial, it's philosophical. The American Constitution and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms were both designed with the understanding that a free and independent press serves as the fourth estate, a check on state power that operates outside of government reach. The moment the state begins writing checks to the press, that independence ceases to exist. It doesn't require overt editorial interference. The mere existence of funding creates incentives to avoid coverage that threatens the relationship, softens criticism, or criticizes the worldview of the political agenda that controls the purse strings. Take a look at this chart. This is a chart published by Unbiased America using data from the American Association of Advanced Science. This is a survey of average journalist political ideological beliefs. 78% of journalists are more liberal than the average Twitter user. 66% are more liberal than former President Obama. Most journalists are more left than Bernie Sanders. 1 in 7 journalists are more left than AOC. It should be no surprise that 63% of Republicans say that journalists are an enemy of the American people. Covering both sides of a story not only benefits conservatives, but also educates liberals on what the valid counter-arguments are. This chart shows the ideologies of American journalists. However, it doesn't illustrate how they cover these topics. Do they cover them while putting their liberal bias aside? To answer this, we need to look at the top publications. When we look at the top most visited news sites in the US, out of the top 10, only 1 is right-leaning. All the rest are left-leaning, with the exception of the BBC, which is center. In order to be objective about this, I'm using a website called All Sides to determine if a publisher is right or left-leaning. You can see the differences in how these publications spin the same story from their political perspective. In this example about seizing Iranian oil, from the left, Trump wants to invade Iran to seize oil, calls US objectors stupid people. so framed pretty negatively. From the center, Trump weighs military operation to extract Iran's uranium. From the right, US eyes seizing Iran's oil lifeline, but may not cripple Tehran. The spin is obvious on the left and right publications, which isn't a problem when you have an equal number of left and right publications. But that's simply not the case. A predominantly left-leaning media ecosystem narrows the range of perspectives people see, shaping narratives in ways that feel one-sided. When coverage consistently favors certain viewpoints, it risks reinforcing bad opinions or overlooking valid counter-arguments and eroding trust among audiences who feel misrepresented. Over time, this can deepen polarization as publications fail to represent the views of a large portion of Americans and Canadians. Remember how the CBC gets $1.4 billion in funding from the government each year? According to all sides, they lean left. Imagine what Canada would look like if we funded publications that were on the right. For many years, I ran the marketing department at a US and Canadian publisher. I can tell you the secret sauce for making money on content is walking the line between editorial integrity and the salacious click.
You're not just gonna let him die like that, are you?
My shoulder angel.
Don't listen to that guy. He's trying to lead you down the path of righteousness. I'm gonna lead you down the path that rocks.
Publishers are paid by displaying their ads on their articles, writing sponsored content, linking to affiliate offers, or through paid subscriptions. 30 years ago, every household had a newspaper subscription. Journalists didn't have to worry about tabloid-like headlines. Editorial integrity was paramount. Your audience paid a monthly fee to read what you had to say, and that was enough. Today, the landscape is vastly different. Everything is free, which means publishers make their money on ads. The more people read your article, the more ads you can show, and the more money you make. The result is clickbait headlines engineered to provoke, because the more outrage a publisher can generate, the more revenue they can earn. A 2023 analysis by All Sides looked at roughly 500 articles on Google News over a 2-week period. The breakdown was 63% came from left-leaning outlets and just 6% from the right. That's 10 times more articles featured from the left. Who were the biggest contributors? CNN at 16% and the New York Times at 12%. Of the top 10 sources Google News featured, 8 leaned left. CBS, NBC, Yahoo News, the Associated Press. Only 2 broke the pattern, Reuters in the center and Fox News on the right. And that wasn't limited to 1 or 2 topics. It was abortion, climate change, the economy, elections, immigration, Biden coverage. Across nearly every major issue, left-leaning outlets accounted for more than half the results. Right-leaning sources, rarely above 12%. I honestly think it's a miracle that Trump won the election at all, given the barrage of one-sided media against him. All Sides' conclusion was straightforward. Aggregating from multiple outlets doesn't automatically give you a balance of perspectives. Now here's where it gets interesting. A joint study by the Media Research Center in All Sides looked at Apple News in early 2026. In January, they found 0 articles from conservative outlets in Apple's curated top stories. By February, that number had crept up to somewhere between 1.4 and 2%. It took until February 12th for a conservative outlet to appear at all. That outlet was Fox News. And the reason it finally showed up? The FTC had gotten involved. FTC Chairman Andrew Ferguson, a Republican appointee, sent a letter directly to Apple CEO Tim Cook. His message, the systematic suppression of conservative news may violate federal consumer protection laws. That's not a media critic complaining. That's a federal regulator putting it in writing. The fourth estate, the free press, was never supposed to be perfect. It was supposed to be independent. Independent from the government that funds it. Independent from the financial incentives that corrupt it. Independent from the tech platforms that decide whether or not you see it at all. And staffed by people who actually reflect the range of views held by the people they serve. Right now, none of those things are true. Governments are bankrolling outlets that criticize them least. The people writing the stories can lean overwhelmingly in one political direction. The business model rewards outrage over accuracy. And the platforms distributing that content have their own thumb on the scale. So far to the left that it took a federal regulator to get a single Fox News article into the Apple top stories. These aren't isolated problems. They're a system. And systems don't fix themselves. I do want to be clear about something. This isn't an argument that the left is evil and the right is pure. It's an argument that balance matters. When one side of the political spectrum controls the funding, the newsrooms, the algorithms, and the distribution, democracy suffers. Not because some grand conspiracy, but because of incentives, hiring patterns, and money.
I have to tell you, since I get the invitation to speak here, everybody says to you, everybody wants to give you advice about how to talk at this dinner. Some people are like, stick it to the man, Craig. Other people are like, don't rock the boat, Craig. Everybody says do political humor, which is, what they mean by that is, do jokes that I agree with politically. And I spoke to a lot of journalists about how I should speak up here, and everyone, all the journalists said, Craig, your duty is speak truth to power. That's what you do. You hold the truth up for everyone to see. That's your job, speak truth to power. And I'm sorry, I don't see it that way. That's your job. You're journalists. I'm a late night television show guy. I make up crap that isn't true and then I say it on TV.
The good news, you're watching this, which means you're already doing the most important thing, thinking critically about where your information comes from. Question the funding, question the framing, and for the love of everything, read across the aisle once in a while. Think about that.